get into the meeting. If you could maybe just type into the chat where you are joining from. It's really cool to see where Team ALS charity runners are coming from. You guys are a great group, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, but oh, this is great. Oh, and I'm getting the goosebumps, like Michelle's like, it just got real. Whitney, hey, Melanie. Yeah, this is great, you guys. Super, super exciting. And again, it's very neat to see where all of your teammates are coming from. What you're about to do is, you know, a very personal journey with training for a marathon, but to know that you're a part of a big team. Sorry, I'm getting emotional already, but you know, that you guys are a part of something big, and you can see that here in this group. We've got a lot of folks in the meeting, and they're coming from all over. So we will just launch right in and get started with our Team ALS updates. So excited to announce that you all are already breaking records, and you didn't even have to do too much. You are the largest Team ALS to date, the largest Team ALS charity run team in the country. There are 250 of you, which is amazing. And so already, hopefully you guys feel proud about that. Like what you're doing is important and huge, and you're part of the biggest Team ALS to date. And you've also already raised the most money by a Team ALS to date. So your ALS fundraising, you're over $112,000 ALS, which is incredible. And we're so grateful for all of your efforts. And all your efforts so early. And so it's going to be very awesome to see where you continue to go through this marathon season and how those numbers continue to grow. And again, just the impact that you're having on all those living with ALS and all of those who have a close connection to ALS. So thank you, you guys. And again, thank you for being here tonight. I would like to start a little bit talking about the ALS United Greater Chicago mission. I know that many of you joined Team ALS because you do have a personal connection to the disease. And so many of you are already familiar with that, but just want to let you know a little bit about what we do and how we help those living with ALS. So we really have three pillars to our mission. There is care, there is research, and there is advocacy. Everything that we do is free to those living with ALS and their families. And all of the fundraising that you're doing really helps so that we can continue to provide care, fund the research that is so, so necessary, and then advocate for the funding and the healthcare and all of that that's important too for those living with ALS. And we do that locally and nationally as well. So again, what you're doing, it impacts all of that, all of our mission. And just to tell you a little bit more about our care services, we do have 5 full-time care coordinators on staff, and they're serving about 400 people living with ALS in Chicagoland, Central Illinois, and Northern Illinois. And those folks are amazing individuals, and they really like come alongside the person living with ALS and their families. They work in our ALS multidisciplinary clinics. They provide education for the caregivers so they can provide care to their loved ones. We host monthly support groups. We do equipment lending. And again, just wanting to make sure that no one is dealing with this diagnosis alone. And so we really want to come alongside them and provide everything that we can and, you know, help them navigate this. And again, your fundraising directly impacts all of this and allows us to do this. These are our 2024 numbers, and those are real people and real families that we've been able to help because of people like you. So thank you. I think I mentioned we serve around 400 people living with ALS at any given time. And here are some of those folks. As you can see, ALS, it doesn't discriminate. It can affect anyone at any time, regardless of gender or age or race. And that's really one of those unknowns with the disease. You know, it's sporadic 90% of the time. And so you just don't know who it's going to impact. And so we just want to be there for all of these families. And thank you for allowing us to do that. Just a little bit more about ALS. Again, I know many of you have those personal connections, and so unfortunately you are very
Excuse me, it's all on mute.
with the disease. But sorry, I was just trying to mute.
Please mute if you haven't already.
Thanks, Coach. So sadly, ALS is still 100% fatal, and that is not okay. And we need to continue funding that research so that people, when they're diagnosed, they have treatment options. And so that is a very important part of our mission. After diagnosis, patients usually live about 2 to 5 years. And again, this varies from person to person. Sometimes it's more slower progressing, and occasionally it's faster. But again, these statistics are not okay, and we need to figure out how people can actually continue to live with ALS, and there needs to be some better treatments for them. I mentioned that 90% of the cases are sporadic, and it can impact anyone at any time, but there are about 10% of the cases that are familial, and they have done some pretty cutting edge research recently where they have identified 2 of those genes. And so they are getting close to some pretty great treatment options for that. And so that is exciting. And, you know, we do see hope in the research, and we just want that momentum to continue. Again, ALS is overwhelming and there's a lot to it. And so if you ever have any questions or you ever want more information, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm always happy to talk with you more about this and provide more information to you. Again, the Team ALS fundraising, you all are directly impacting all of that. You are helping the patients and families that we serve, and you are funding the research. There's some really cool research going on right now at the University of Chicago. And so all that you are doing is helping with all of that. And you all are doing a great job with your fundraising so far. As I mentioned, you're ahead of the game from all Team ALS groups in the past, so great job. I would like to recognize that you all have registered for our Team ALS on our website, so thank you for taking care of that. I know there are several steps, so appreciate you. But this is our website, the bit.ly link at the bottom, and so you can go there anytime and log in from the top right corner with your username and password. We do encourage you to go in and customize your personal fundraising page. You guys have a story to tell. You're going to be running 26.2 miles on October 12th for those impacted by ALS. And so we want you to tell your story. All of the text there is editable, and you can change out the picture, and you can make it your own. You can also create a custom URL that you can easily type in or copy and paste to get the word out to your supporters. Another recommendation is to make a self-donation, which many of you did do when you registered. But that really shows your supporters that you care about the cause, and they're more willing to then make a donation when they see that you're already invested. And it doesn't have to be a large donation, and you don't even have to show the amount, but you will get a little badge on your personal fundraising page that says that you've made a self-donation. And again, it just shows folks that you're invested, and they'll want to be too. And then from the participant center, you can upload contacts and send out emails. There's a few templates in there that again are customizable, so you can change them out. You can also just take your custom URL and put that into your personal emails and share it that way. And then of course, texts. Some people, just like to use their phone, and so sending a text is easier. So again, with that custom URL, you can easily text that out. And if you need help creating that, please ask me and I'm happy to help you. And then again, your family and your friends and, your supporters. And so maybe some of them would prefer to have a handwritten or typed letter from you. On our website, there is a printable donation form. So, even think about sending some snail mail, and that is a great idea too. So again, just creating your story, creating your page, and then sharing it with everyone so they know what you're doing. And then also in the participant center, the Facebook integration is there. So you should be able to seamlessly add your fundraising page to Facebook, and just another easy way for folks to donate. But again, you can type in your custom URL wherever social media platforms that you're using is totally fine. And for some fundraising ideas for you all, I do try to encourage you along the way. I know that it can be overwhelming to just make those asks. And so sometimes it's nice if you can find a fun, interactive way to get your supporters involved. So I will try to offer these to you throughout the training season. It is March. Sunday is Selection Sunday. I'm not sure if we have any NCAA basketball fans in here, but this is a great fundraising tool to use this month. And it's fairly easy to do. If you're in our Facebook group, you might have seen Kelly Drew's post. She's a Team ALS alum, but she's been doing this for years and has had great success with it. So I know she could be a resource if you have questions, and I'm happy to help. But there are printable brackets online. You can blast this out to your network and have the buy-in, $5, $10, $20. Have half of that go to the winners of the pool, and then the other half can be put towards your ALS fundraising. So again, just a fun way to get folks involved and take advantage of the season that is March Madness. One of your teammates actually reached out and had this idea to have an image added to their signature line on their emails that would hyperlink to the personal fundraising page, which I thought was an amazing idea. So my colleague Sam created about 6 of these images that I will share in the email when I send out the recording. But you can choose an image, you can add it to the bottom under your name of any of your email signature lines and hyperlink it. And then every time someone gets an email from you over the next 3 months, they have the opportunity to learn more about what you're doing and your Chicago Marathon for ALS. So I thought that was a great idea. And then one more idea that folks have had a lot of success with over the years is to just think of a talent or a craft or a gift that you have. It could be something that you create food-wise, or if you knit scarves, or something that maybe people know or don't know about you, but you could offer that as an incentive for your donors to donate. So maybe you make the best banana bread in the world. So anyone that makes a $50 or more donation to your page, they're going to get a homemade loaf of banana bread from you. Or maybe in a week span, anyone that's made a donation gets a jar of your homemade salsa. So just, think about those ways that you can get your folks involved and make it a little more fun and interactive for them. And again, if you ever need help brainstorming, I'm here to help you. And this is exciting. Usually we don't have this page in our presentation for our Zoom meetings until our second Zoom, but I am happy to announce that we have some fundraising shout outs. These are your teammates that have already met or exceeded their fundraising goals, which is awesome. And many of you were really, really close to hitting yours too. So this word cloud is just going to continue to grow, and we'll look forward to seeing that next time we're together. But again, just great job on your fundraising already, you guys. Thank you so much for taking it seriously and getting it started already. It's really exciting to see this momentum. Now, we do have a few ways that we can stay connected and communicate with each other this training season, and hopefully it doesn't feel too overwhelming. First is the Facebook group I mentioned. hopefully most of you have joined that now. I know not everyone uses the Facebook social platform anymore, and that's totally fine. But if you are on it, I encourage you to join it. It's made up of current Team ALS members as well as alums. So it's a super powerful resource. There's lots of questions and answers in there about fundraising and training. People share their personal stories, their whys. It's an opportunity to encourage your teammates and encourage one another. So I would recommend joining if you haven't. It's a great place to meet and a great community of Team ALS members. And then hopefully now you've received 2 e-newsletters from me. Those go out at the beginning of each month. And it just has important dates and then again, training tips and fundraising tips. So just helpful information for you. And so if you've not yet received yours, please let me know and I'll do some troubleshooting, but hopefully you're getting those. And again, hopefully it's not overwhelming, just once a month with important information. And then at the bottom of my emails to you is my cell phone number. So please feel free to use that anytime in addition to, emailing me, but you can always call or text me and I'm available to help at any time. So please, please keep that in mind. In those newsletters, hopefully you saw, we do have 2 room blocks at local hotels for Team ALS. I do apologize, the Palmer House platform, we've never used that before, and so it's been a little tricky getting it figured out, and so I don't think the links were working properly. So some of you have reached out to me and you've been able to make your reservations, but if you are interested in that one, please let me know and I can send you the link, and then in all future communications, it will be correct, hopefully. But as you can see, the X marks the spot in Grant Park where you will be starting your race on October 12th. Just to the left of that, the kind of upside down teardrop is the Team ALS Race Day Suite that is open all day for you to come pre-race and post-race. And it's super convenient and it will literally take you like 2 minutes to get from there to the starting line. The 2 hotels are marked on the map with the orange stars. The Palmer House Hilton is the P that's a little closer to the suite. And then the Holiday Inn is just across the river. And that's where we'll host our team dinner on Saturday night. I know a couple people have asked me about that, and it's a little farther away, but I promise it's not too tricky to get to where you need to go that morning. But the dinner is on Saturday evening. So we will talk a little bit more about that next time we meet, our next Zoom. But if you can save the date now, it's from 5:30 to 7:30, and we invite every Team ALS charity runner plus 1 guest. And it's just a great time to connect and celebrate the night before the race and eat some pasta together. So more details next time, but just wanted to talk about each of the hotels if you're needing accommodations. And your to-do list mentioned customizing your personal fundraising page. You can do that in your participant center, and then please share it far and wide. You have a great story to tell and people want an opportunity to do good. So please share it and don't feel like you're oversharing. It sometimes takes a while, so don't worry about that. In a little bit, Coach will be talking about his preseason base building training plan that he is offering to Team ALS. If you have signed up for his regular marathon training, you're automatically in that. But if you are interested in getting his information and you've not selected Coach's marathon training, please just email me and we'll be sure to get you that information, which he will start sending out the end of this month. And then if you need your hotel room, and please join our Facebook group. And before I launch it off to the Burkles, I just want to say again, thank you, you guys. Thank you for choosing to run the Chicago Marathon with Team ALS, and thank you for making your miles so meaningful. And you're really having an impact on all those we serve, and we are so, so grateful for each of you. And again, we're only able to provide all those services because of people like you. Just wanted to share this quote for you or with you before you get started and, to start mentally preparing for the training season. All you need is the courage to believe in yourself and put one foot in front of the other. And hopefully you're believing in yourself, and hopefully you're believing that you definitely will be completing the Chicago Marathon on October 12th, and that you will get through this training season, which I know seems long and seems daunting, but if you remember your why and think about all of those who you're running for, and just put one foot in front of the other when it doesn't feel like you can get out there and complete your training run, you will surprise yourself. And please remember too that we are all here behind you, and we're supporting you throughout. And whatever you need, reach out, please. At this time, I would like to introduce Jeff Burkle. That's Jeff in the middle there of his two sons, Mike and Matt. And in front of Jeff is his custom race chair, and they are your Team ALS teammates. They are part of this record-breaking year, and they're taking a few minutes tonight to share a little bit more about their story. And it's always nice to get to know your teammates, and we're very, very excited to hear from Jeff and Mike, and I think Matt's here too. So
Yep.
We'll let you guys take it away.
Okay, well, I'm the dad, and I'm the one that has ALS. So I asked my boys to do most of the talking, but if they leave out a detail, I'm going to butt in. But Sarah had asked us to tell our story, and I'll just start off right now. Is we're currently focused on participating in the Boston Marathon, but the boys will tell you how that came about.
Matt, you want to start? Yeah. So we don't have any specific like presentation or anything. We're just here to kind of talk and share our story as, one that I think is hopefully, heartwarming, motivational type story for everyone on this call, especially, given that we're all here fundraising for ALS together. Our dad, Jeff, on the call here, was diagnosed with ALS in December of 2023. And, it's not news that anyone really wants to hear. We had, prior to all of this, we had been runners for a long time. Dad started running in his late 30s. He ran multiple marathons and really kind of inspired Mikey and I to start running as kids. And so we ran. And so we've done other fun running type adventures, and just in general sort of outdoor enthusiasts. I think probably our capstone adventure that we had done prior to this Boston and Chicago marathon attempt was we ran across the Grand Canyon together, rim to rim. So when Dad got his diagnosis, after you kind of get over that first emotional hurdle of accepting, and then thinking, okay, well, what can we do now? What can we do next? Father's Day was approaching, and I talked to Mikey and said, oh, hey, we were actually coming back to our hometown in Central Illinois to run another race. It's a 4-mile race. And it happens every year, and we like to come back for it because we also get to reunite with some of our other high school running teammates, and then all three of us, do it together. And sometimes our sister Katie also joins. She's not like a hardcore runner like us, but she'll still come and do it for fun. And so we were already planning on coming back for a running activity.
Matt, I thought you were coming back because it was Father's Day weekend.
Yes, but we wanted to do Steamboat with you. So I said to Mikey, I didn't even really know what the requirements would be or what the process would be. But yeah, I just texted him during the workday while I was eating lunch, and I was like, hey, what do you think about trying to go back to Boston? We had run it in Mikey and I had run it in 2023. Dad ran it in what, 06, 05?
05,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Mikey was like, "Yeah, let's do this." So we talked to Dad and on the weekend, and we told him, the idea, and it was very exciting. So it's been a big journey to get qualified. So the name of this division is called Duo Team, where it's one person who is handicapped and is in a racing wheelchair, and there's one person pushing the riders. There's one pusher and one rider. Um, and so, well, the first complication was all three of us wanted to do it together, and so that means that one person has to run solo, and one person pushes Dad. And so then we were trying to figure out how we would do this and how we would get into Boston. Boston's got qualification requirements, et cetera. And and on top of all of this, you don't you don't really know when you're going to get an ALS diagnosis. So Mikey and I weren't really in marathon shape at the time, and so qualifying for Boston would have been in such short order was already pretty difficult. So in the end, we looked at the charity program because the hurdle to qualify outright, just even as a duo team, Boston has its own requirements, and the requirement is essentially whoever the pusher is, yeah, whatever their normal qualifying time would be, yeah, you have to run the exact same time, but you have to do it while pushing someone. There's no like leeway or additional time that you get for pushing someone. So for Mikey and I, who are young men, we just have to run like a 2:55 while pushing Dad to qualify for Boston. So that was like, okay, we can't. There's no way we're going to be doing that when we only have like 10 weeks to train. So we looked at the charity program, and that's how we got our entry into the Boston Marathon. But yeah, it was a real adventure. We had to also figure out how to get a racing push chair. I was contacting so I'm in Wisconsin, and there's another charity in Wisconsin that lends out racing push chairs. And then in the end, Dad, you somehow got a hold of the manufacturer and told them, oh, hey, this is what we're trying to do, but we have to qualify. So even to get into the chair program at Boston, you still have to run a qualifying time. It's much more generous than the outright qualifying time. But we still had this deadline, and we didn't have a chair, and we didn't know where we were going to get a chair. And so in the end, Dad, you talked to the manufacturer, which is Adaptive Star, and they're pretty much the only manufacturer in the US that makes these chairs because it's a very niche thing. Yeah, and they heard our story, and they were like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna slot you in. We're gonna produce an extra chair, and we'll get it delivered to you in time." So they shipped the chair, and Mikey, you and Dad had some practice runs with the chair, right? Because we were,
Yeah,
weren't really sure what it'd be like.
I was
Yeah.
because I live in Minneapolis. Dad is in Peoria, Matt's in Madison, so we're not all living in the same place. And so this chair arrives, and they ship it to my house. I put it together, put all the wheels on, and then I'm practicing with it with my wife as a practice person, right? And so it's really funny because if you guys are runners, when you're running down the sidewalk and there's like a car that's gonna cross in front of you, they usually just cut you off. But when you have this thing out and it's bright orange that you guys saw in the picture, they definitely stop and gawk and wait for you. So it was a bit awkward at first to use it, but then Dad did come up and we did a trial half marathon with it. That went pretty well though. And then yeah, we took this thing to continue from what Matt was saying. We took this thing to the Nebraska State Fair Marathon and qualified. That was our qualification race. Completed that, and then since then we've just kind of been like coasting until Boston. Now it's like
Now let me interject, Mike. I was there with you at the Nebraska State Fair Marathon, and we were having a good chat until about mile 21. And then all I heard was heavy breathing and Mike grunting every time he had to turn the chair. And I have to admit, I felt a little guilty, but he got through to the end, and he actually ran pushing me 3:45.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were very happy that so we contacted the organizers ahead of time of the Nebraska State Fair Marathon, also because we wanted to make sure that the race that we ran was officially registered, submitted, etc., as a duo team. Because if we didn't get the official time submitted in the databases, then when Boston went to look it up, they might say, "Oh, well, you aren't in the race database as a duo team." So we contacted, and just from talking to other folks, they said, "Yeah, if you're going to try and do this, don't just show up on race day without talking to the event organizers, because they're going to want to know. They're probably going to want to start you earlier and whatnot." So, oh wait, I forgot where I was going with this. Oh yeah, so we were talking to them, and she was like, "Oh, this is great. We're one of the flattest marathons. You're gonna love this for the chair. It's gonna be great. You won't have to push up any hills." So that I think was pretty true. Although one factor we didn't think about as much was that the push chair doesn't steer. The front wheel doesn't turn left or right. And so to turn it, the pusher has to push down on the back so that it lifts the front wheel up. And then you can pivot it about the back two wheels, and then you put it back down. And so every time you turn, you have to go and turn and douche. And so when Dad's talking about Mikey going like heaving, because the course, while it was very flat, did have a good number of turns.
A lot of turns. A lot of turns.
Yeah. So
it was a good race though. The deal that I made for Dad was if I do this for him, he has to buy me a corn dog at the state fair after. They get our corn dog in the 90-degree Nebraska heat.
Yeah. I paid up. We have a picture of you eating your corn dog. So anyway, we created a foundation to begin our fundraising immediately after the Nebraska qualifying marathon, because it's really hard to get a bib for Boston. They only have 12 ALS slots, and they had like 80 people apply. So we felt if we came to them with a pile of money in our pocket, that would help convince them. So we formed the boys are training their butts off in short order, and I took the time to form a 501c nonprofit, and that way we could do a fundraising, and we were able to raise $20,000 before the November 1st job interview, so to speak. And that was good enough to get us in, because I think they had 11 runners last year, and they raised about $200,000 from just the 11 runners. So we needed to be close to the average, I suppose. So that was exciting for me, because I'm a retired Caterpillar technical manager, and that was kind of like management work. So I felt like I was contributing to the effort. And by the way, we've got about that much raised, Sarah, for the Chicago Marathon. Not quite. We're waiting for some corporate matches to come in, and I think that'll bump up our total. I just not sure how to get that chunk put into the donation site, everybody has, but we'll figure that out.
Yes, Jeff, and I did share, it's jeffreyburkle.org, right?
Yeah.
The website.
Yeah.
So I put that in the
that's
chat. If anybody can, see, and then, it tells more of their story, and you can see the fundraising they've done, and it's amazing.
The boys are having fun. If you get on that site, I think they have their links. About once a week, they post a training video. And this last week, Matt had a little fun. It wasn't him running, it was him showing his worn out running shoes. So I would suggest you go watch that one. It's not something I scolded him, because I'm a distance runner and he knows better. So go watch it to find out why Dad was mad at him.
I'll preface it also by saying that those shoes were not being worn during aggressive marathon training. They were worn during a very relaxed period of running throughout the second half of last year, when I wasn't training for any specific races. But listen to Coach Brendan. Don't listen to don't do what I did on my video.
No.
But
You guys should all go watch it though. It's pretty funny.
yeah, so just, I mean, I guess kind of in general on that mark too, or that sort of like in that vein. Yeah, it's been kind of a fun way to share our experience as well. Sarah, I know you were talking about ways to sort of get the word out to your friends and family and whatnot. So yeah, it's, it's very much home videos. Like we have a phone and we, we're either out on a run or we just got back from a run, or yeah. Yeah, like it's just, it's nice because people, I think when they see that video, they start to think, oh, like this is an adventure, I want to be a part of it. So we're kind of using that to share our story. And it's also nice for your donors because people want to follow along, right? And hear how it went and see how it's going. So
I love that too, Matt, and that's a great idea. An example that you're setting, but for everyone, that's another way to, tell your story and bring them along on your training run, or make those videos right after. So
yeah, it's all short stuff. It's like, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Facebook Reels, whatever is your preferred platform. We're just spamming posts out to all of them. Well, not TikTok, because when we started doing this, I couldn't download the app. But apparently now you can re-download the app, but I didn't want to go back and repost everything. So
yeah, I posted the Facebook link for those who want to see it, but there's also an Instagram that matches up. It's the same thing, and then we do have a YouTube. Yeah, feel free to follow those if you guys want to see our training for Boston. I'm sure we'll probably continue it as we come into the Chicago Marathon timing. But yeah, I mean, we're, to kind of segue on from what Matt's been saying, like we're out here kind of to show people, who have ALS, that that's not like your diagnosis is not the last step of like what you can do in your life. We don't want our dad to just sit at home and do nothing, right? Like it's really easy to just get into the trap of just like being alone at home. And so we're doing this, to show him and other people that like you can still enjoy your life, right? Like he was a runner his whole life. He taught me and my brother to run when we were younger than 10 years old. We've been doing it for 2 decades or more now. And so it's like, we're not going to stop trying to live our life with dad just because he got ALS. Eventually we'll get to a point where that gets harder and harder. But like while you're in that transition, you can still live your life, right? And the more you can do in your life with ALS, I think the better the disease is going to be for you as well. So I don't know how many of you guys have loved ones who have ALS or know other people who have that diagnosis, but it's, I think it's really important for those people to go out there and support them that way, right? And to bring new things into their life or continue doing whatever they have. Like that sense of normalcy really does help. And I'm sure, Dad, you can speak to that, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm very grateful. And it's, it gives me, like focus and direction in my life. So kind of, it doesn't exactly take your mind off your disease because we're doing this because of the disease. And there's a lot of good coming out of it, and initial diagnosis is bad. But the fact that we're trying to make lemonade out of lemons and have a lot of fun doing it makes all the difference in the world to your attitude. I'm not happy I got ALS, but it's not all bad. We wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have it. So we're trying to have a positive attitude, and I'm very grateful for my boys and the gift they're giving me here.
I love that, Jeff and Matt and Mike. And I don't know if you guys have been seeing all the comments in the chat, but I think that it's very obvious that you guys are, choosing joy and your beautiful attitudes, and that you're gonna complete 2 majors this year. So we are rooting for you guys next month when you're in Boston. You'll feel all of Team ALS Chicago propelling you along. And then I know that Team ALS will be honored and excited to be on the streets of Chicago with you guys in October. So thank you guys so much for
thank you, Sarah.
being part of the team and for sharing your stories with us. So yes, and hopefully you feel the love from Team ALS because there's lots of it there. And now we'll transition to our marathon training expert, Coach Brendan. I made a great slide for you, Coach, but then I stopped sharing my screen, so I'm sorry, but it just, gave Coach props. He's completed 100 marathons. He's done all 50 states, all 7 continents. Like, he is your guy. And if you have any questions at all, please ask him. He is here for Team ALS.
Thank you, Sarah. And thanks to all the Burkles for your magnificent story and humanizing what the mission is all about. And I have the pleasure of working with all 3 of them for the training program for Boston. And it's really been an inspiration. So thank you for all 3 of you. And it's also good, as I'm looking over the participants list for this meeting, to see quite a few familiar faces and names from last year and previous years. So welcome back to those of you who are repeat marathoners. As Sarah said, I've done 100 marathons, and at least once in every marathon, I've said, I'm never going to do this again. I don't know what I was thinking about at the time I signed up for this. However, I found that I was lying every time I said that. Usually within about 5 or 10 minutes after completing the marathon, the pain goes away, the bad memories go away, and the joy and the gratitude step in. And the joy and the gratitude, not only of accomplishing a feat like finishing a marathon, but when it's tied to a purpose, like um, Team ALS and the mission that you're supporting, it makes it much more meaningful. My purpose in helping you along this part is to help you get to the start line. Because one of the mantras that I have that I share throughout the course of the season is that you can't get to the finish line if you don't get to the starting line. So before we plan where we're going, which is the finish line on Columbus Avenue, we need to know where we're starting. It's like setting the GPS on your car, or if you're just walking from one place to another. It's not only the destination, but where you're starting from. And you'll find that when you plug in the GPS direction, there are a myriad of ways to get there. There's the fastest route, there's the shortest route, there's the quickest route, there's a scenic route, there is one with tollways, there's one with road construction. So all of these is what you are willing to do to go from the starting point where you are now to the finish line in October. For the training program that I offer to all of you in Team ALS, there's a 20-week training schedule. The marathon training begins on June 1st and runs until the Saturday following the marathon. So not only on marathon day, but you get to continue running for the rest of that week in order to help your recovery period, which is very, very big in the whole course of training. And I ask you to think about a couple of things. First off, when you see the training schedules, there'll be 6 of them altogether. 3 are for continuous running, 3 are for run walk. And I want you to start by asking yourselves, what type of an athlete are you? And once you determine what kind of an athlete you are, what type of an athlete you are now, not what you were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 3 years ago, and not what you will be in 6 months from now, but the athlete you are now. And once you do that, I want you to do 2 things. First, do your own training. And second, train towards the goal, not at the goal. By way of background, I divide athletes into 2 basic categories for purposes of marathon training, either a runner or a non-runner. And you'll fall into one of the categories. For those of you who are runners, there's 3 classifications. You're either an experienced marathoner, primarily somebody who's run a marathon within the last couple of years, maybe a little bit longer than that, but you're familiar with some long distances. And of course, the longer it's been since you've run a marathon, the more nuances there are in the training program and selecting it and completing the training program. Second classification is what I would call somebody who's an endurance runner. You may have participated in events of 10 miles, half marathons, or something like that, but maybe you haven't done a full marathon yet. You could be a very experienced runner, but just haven't got that extra distance. And a third classification of runner is what I refer to as a casual runner. Perhaps you're running on a regular basis, maybe 2, maybe even as many as 5 or 6 times a week, but it's low mileage. It's a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, more maintenance, kind of easy pace, occasionally races, maybe 5Ks, 10Ks, but that's about the extent of your casual running. The other type of athlete that I think many of you will fall into is that of a non-runner. And non-runners can be classified as somebody who's very athletic, but from a different sport. It could be somebody who's a cyclist. It could be somebody who's a volleyball player, a basketball player, a swimmer. You're active in ways that don't call on the same muscle groups. So you're fit, but you're not marathon fit. When Mike and Matt were talking earlier, a couple of years ago, when they started to get this idea, they were running more casually. So they weren't quite in marathon shape when they were looking at those goals. And perhaps that's where you fit in as well. Active in another sport, and you'll call upon different muscle groups. You'll call on different types of mental attitude to get through the marathon training. The other type of a non-runner is somebody who's really not active. And this could be because you never or hardly ever ran. I've had a lot of people who join training programs like this, especially when it involves a charity program and a mission like ALS, who do this because of the connection to the mission. And they've never run, hardly ever exercised, and said, I would never even think about that. There's probably people on this call, because I've heard from them in years past, that I wouldn't even drive my car 26.2 miles, and you're expecting me to run 26.2 miles? However, because of the mission, because of my connection, I am willing to put myself on the line and train. The other type of non-active person is somebody who's taken time off from exercise. And often this is because of family commitments, work, or life choices. Perhaps you were an athlete, maybe even a runner when you were in middle school or high school, maybe even college, but there's been a big gap. And so you're non-active now or haven't been for a while. And the third type of a runner or athlete who is non-active could be coming back from an injury. And it could be a significant injury, or it could be a minor injury that just developed into not putting a lot of effort into training for a period of time. So I mentioned those types to say that people in these training programs cover the waterfront as far as what your backgrounds are. And when you look at the schedules, you'll see that there are 3 for run walk, 3 for continuous running that are based on where you're coming from with your background. And so I ask you to really take a look at what the qualifications are. And these are listed at the beginning of each one of the training schedules. And I ask you to be honest about yourself as to which one of those training programs best suits your current condition. Not where you were 10 years ago, not where you will be in 6 months, but where you are right now. And look to your recent running history, whichever one of those 6 classifications you fall into, the 3 under the runner or the 3 under the non-runner. Where are you objectively now? And also think about, how much time do I have to commit to training between now and October? We all have busy lives. Many of us are caretakers because of people who are afflicted with this disease or other family or social situations. So be honest about the amount of time you can dedicate to the training program, because a very difficult thing is to overcommit to the type of training that you have the time to commit. And also, as we go through the training schedule, how is the body responding? One of the biggest mistakes that runners make, both on race day and also in training, is trying to do too much too soon. So I really encourage you to take a less aggressive schedule to start with the training schedule. And as we go through the season, we'll talk also about the less aggressive nature of training until you know that your body and your mind can move up to a more aggressive training. And there'll be periodic checkpoints throughout the season that we can look at to see if it's time to step up training or perhaps step back. The second point that I mentioned of doing your own training. Once you tell people that you're running a marathon, you will find a plethora of people who say, I ran a marathon, and here's what you need to do. Here are the types of shoes you should wear. Here's the types of clothing you should wear. And here's how many miles you should run. And here's how fast you should run. The first thing you do is you pick your time goal of running a 3-hour marathon. So you train this way because that's what worked for me. That's a myth. That's a fallacy. Friends, family members may tell you what worked for them, but you're not them. So likewise, when you're picking out the correct schedule, the appropriate schedule for you and your background, remember that you have to do your own training. You may also notice there'll be postings on Facebook. Even members of this group will, with all forms of encouragement, talk about running a 20-mile training run the first week of June because they've been preparing for that. If you haven't done that and you're just starting your training program, a 20-mile run in June is not recommended. So don't always listen to other sources. Examine the nature of where the information comes from and how does that apply to each one of you in your training. And the other one is that as we go through the course of training, many of you will see articles posted in magazines like Runner's World about somebody who is embarking on a training program. And again, look to the source of that information. When a person has a very inspirational story or talks about a very aggressive training program, what's their background? How close does that background fit the training that you have to that point, to their experience level? Somebody who's accustomed to running 100 miles a week is not going to train the same as somebody who's entering a training program now for the very first time. And, when you look at some of the elite runners, they are often running 100, 110, 120 miles a week. But I'll also say that most of them, when you see their elite stories, don't do anything else except run. Their day considers of things like getting up, running, having breakfast, having a massage, run, having lunch, have a massage, run, and that's part of their routine. They don't have as many family obligations or work obligations. So look for the perspective and the other details in the
What?
stories before you just completely try to
What happened?
follow a schedule. There is somebody who still has their microphone on. Would you please mute? Thank you. So when I say do your own training, keep in mind what your background is currently and move forward according to that. The third element is training towards the goal, not at the goal. And I encourage folks throughout the course of training to have a finished goal in mind. But especially if you're not an experienced marathoner who's got a recent running history, those goals are going to be movable. We don't know what's a training program right now or what a legitimate goal would be for a training program. And many people make a mistake of saying, I want to run X time. And so they start training at that goal. For example, if you wanted to run a 4-hour marathon, that's approximately 9 minutes a mile. If you want to run a 5-hour marathon, that's about 11 and a half minutes a mile. If you want to run a 6-hour marathon, that's 13:40 minutes per mile. And you may be there on race day in October, but you may not be there now. So start off with a training period of intensity that works for you now, and incremental improvements along the way work towards the goal to keep you safe and sound. Our purpose is to get to the starting line healthy, because you can't get to the finish line if you don't get to the starting line. You'll hear me talk both in the training tips and also in our sessions like this, that more is not always better. Or another way to think about that is less is more. Less can be more in mileage, but intensity. Most of our training runs are done at an easy, slow pace, not the pace that we would run a 5K or a 10K or even a marathon. But we slow down because we build endurance before we build speed. One of the most common mistakes is that we do too much too soon, which overloads the system, And more importantly, we don't allow for adequate recovery. Rest days are built into the schedule. Reduction in mileage appears every couple of weeks in the training schedule as safety valves to allow your body to adapt to the rigors of training. Most importantly, we have the ability to revise training. And I always believe one of my tenets is that it's better to start conservatively and increase the intensity and the mileage than it is to start aggressively and be forced to reduce because of injury or burnout or life circumstances getting in the way. It's a lot easier to move up or even stay the same than it is to be forced to take a step back. So please ask for guidance. Some of the training tips talk about what happens when life gets in the way. There'll be training tips about when to increase your pace, to pick out races, to set your goals. And please use me as a resource. Part of my goal is to help you get to the starting line, but I can't answer questions that I'm not asked. So if you have training questions, please reach out to me and I will respond as quickly as I can. And we'll do it individually. What you may find is that if you ask me something, rather than give you a direct answer in my first email, I will ask you a series of questions. And I do that because I want to know a little bit about you, because each one of you has a different background, a different history, and a different basis for the questions that you're asking. So don't be too surprised if you get a list of questions in response before I give a more definitive answer. And that again is to make sure that I am not prejudging the answer to your question, but I want to make sure that the answer that I give is the most well-rounded and research that I can give you along the way. I'd like you to select the best training schedule that you can based on your experience level, based on your realistic goals, based on your time to train. And as we go through the training program, I will ask you periodically to stop and take a look where you are. Look what's ahead in your training schedule, but also look backwards to where you've been, whether it's the last week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks in training, to see what the cumulative buildup has been and how that impacts the training and the training questions you have. Because at any point, we have to look forwards and backwards to know exactly where we are. Because if we have to reset the GPS, we need to know honestly and objectively where we are right now. I also mentioned that run walk is one of the options. And I have had great success with run walk. Run walk is a designed strategy to complete a race where you alternate between walking for a bit of time and running for a bit of time. And many times when I suggest that people participate in a run walk program, the response is negative, that I'm not really a runner if I run walk. If I take walking breaks, I don't really deserve the medal. If I'm run walk, I'm slow and maybe not even belong in the race. However, I will tell you from my personal experience that I have qualified for the Boston Marathon several times by walking a minute per mile in the race. My fastest time walking a minute a mile, including in mile 26, was 3 hours and 26 minutes. And that is where I would walk the first minute of every mile and then running to the next mile marker. The breakdowns of the run walk schedules that I provide are different. And they will, again, they can be tailored to your experience and background and how things work. I've also found, both for myself and for a lot of the runners that I've trained, that they can often finish a marathon faster by run walking than they can if they try continuous running. The reason for that is that with the planned breaks and the effective strategy, you're able to maintain your pace for a longer period of time without the variance that you have in trying to run all the way through. And somewhere around mile 18, 19, 22, you just kind of fall off the table. So it's a planned strategy that can work for you. It allows for recovery during training. It allows for recovery during the race. It provides less stress in the body, more recovery during and after the training runs. There are more rewards. I always thought of myself as when I got to a mile marker and could walk for a minute, I was rewarding myself with a walking break. And for those of you who are experienced runners, imagine when you're doing speed training and speed training intervals. What do? You run fast for quarter mile, half mile, and then you do a recovery lap or two. Same concept as run walk. The stress, recovery, stress, recovery. So it's an endurance buildup safely and gradually. If you have more questions about it, I'm glad to talk with you about the strategy behind it and how it works. And as we're wrapping up, I do invite you to start thinking about your goals. It's not too early to think about your goals, but I would like you to think about a realistic and achievable goal. And by way of example, if somebody wanted to run a 3.5 hour marathon, which is an 8-minute mile, that's pretty specific. But if you're running a 5K at a 14-minute per mile pace, a 20-week, 25-week period is not going to really be adequate to get you from that pace to running 8.5 minutes a mile for 26 miles. So put it into perspective as to what's going to work well for you. Your goals should be based on your current fitness level with markers along the way as to how you measure your improvement. We monitor with objective criteria. And again, we do our own training, comparing yourself to your own status and not who you were or who you will be in 6 months. The preseason training schedule that I have, for those of you who are inclined to use it, is a 6-week training program where you will build up to a period of about 15 miles a week. It will start on April 20th, Easter Sunday, and goes through May 31st, the day before marathon training begins. That will give you a basis to start building up your routine. If you're running more than that, you may not really need that preseason schedule, but you're welcome to use that as a guideline along the way. If you're not at that pace, I recommend that you do contact me to get that training schedule and follow it, because the training schedule over the 6 weeks will help build a habit of running and a mileage for a gradual buildup that will put you at a spot where you have the base to start marathon training on June 1st. In addition to the training schedules and the preseason, you'll also receive a weekly training tip from me, usually on Tuesday, which will correspond to things that we see in the training schedule and the training season. And the training tips are available for you if you want to get them, whether or not you're following my training schedule. I know that there are people all over the country and all over the world. You may have different training schedules. You may have different groups that you run with, but you still can avail yourself of the training schedules and, by way of comparison, and also avail yourself of the training tips to get a little bit of background along the way. Please use me as a resource, and I look forward to working with you throughout the course of the training and seeing you on race weekend here in Chicago. Back to you, Sarah.
Coach, thank you so much. And again, Team ALS, you are so lucky to have Coach as a resource, and he is here for you. And like he said, he can't answer your question if you don't ask it. So please know that he is available to you throughout the training season. Coach, thank you for that. If anybody has any questions right now that you can think of after listening to all of the stuff, it was a lot that we threw at you tonight. So I know you probably need to process a bit, but you're welcome to come off mute now and ask a question or type it into the chat, or, you know, in a few days after you've gone through all of this information and questions pop up, you can always email me and or Coach, and we're here for you. I'll check the chat real quick. It's been very active, but it doesn't look like there's many questions yet. Again, you know, it's just the start. We're coming into the base building, and yes, let me put Coach's email in there. And, you know, there's plenty of time here, but again, just know that Coach is here for you. I am here for you. And if you need anything at all, sorry, I'm trying to talk and type at the same time. It's not working. If you need anything at all, please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out. coach@coachbrendan.com is the email. And he's also in the Facebook group, like I mentioned, and he could be available by phone too if, you know, you get to that point. But again, He's an amazing resource. So think about that as you're starting this journey, as you're looking at those goals, as you're preparing for marathon training season, and just know that he's here for you and I'm here for you. And it's so cool to see this great, amazing group that is Team ALS 2025. And it's going to be awesome to see everything that you all do this year. The hotel room blocks, you have through June to reserve your room. So there is still time, but it is limited. I mean, there's still inventory for both, but yeah, so the hotel room blocks through June will have availability. And they are cancelable too. So if you are thinking you might need a room, I'd encourage you to book it. And then there is, I think you have until September, and you can get the refund. So yes, but yes, anything, training, fundraising, hotels. I know probably your mind is already going to Chicago Marathon weekend. There's a lot happening logistically that weekend. And so we'll dive into that more in the upcoming newsletters and our next Zoom. But it's exciting to see you all and to be kicking off this journey with you. And yeah, the familiar faces are fun to see, and our new ones too. So thank you all so much for choosing this journey and choosing Team ALS. And it's going to be amazing to see your journey. So thank you again. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt and Jeff. I think
Thank you.
Mike left. Good night, you guys. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.